All right, so our next panel, we've got a great one. This has always been one of our more popular ones. So we have our industry leaders panel coming up, and y'all can come right on up, and with our moderator, JJ Ament. We'll introduce you to the speakers. We've got a good 55-minute session for that, with plenty of time for Q&A with our industry leaders.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thanks for having us. We'll dive right in. I'm JJ Ament. I'm the president and chief executive of the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce. It's great to be with you to lead this industry panel and this discussion with these distinguished guests. It's fun to be here. Personally, Grandma was from Gypsum, my grandpa from Fruita, so kind of in the middle here. I feel right at home, even though I grew up out in Logan County. Denver Metro Chamber is proud to be part of the panel, and one special shout out to Tallgrass and to Chevron, who are trustees at the chamber and members of my board of directors and my bosses, and incredibly charming and handsome, incredible, awesome people. So grateful to be here and talk a little bit about, while the chamber, our membership is statewide, but primarily focused on the Front Range. We do take a statewide interest, and while we work with the governor this year to celebrate Colorado's 150th birthday, which is awesome, August 1st, this year, the Chamber is actually celebrating our 159th birthday. So we really have been in the business of Colorado for longer than Colorado's been a state. So as we kick off the panel here, I just want to go down the line. Greg, we'll start with you. Just tell us about how long you've been doing business in Colorado, where the company Prairie's been operating, so that we can get some introductions and people know where you sit before we tell them where you stand.
Yeah, thanks, JJ, and thanks for the opportunity to be here today. Greg Patton, CFO Prairie Operating. Been operating here in the basin in multiple different facets, starting in public accounting, into consulting, and then as an operator from 2014 forward, starting my career at GWP in the operations space. We sold that company to PDC, and most recently 2 years here at Prairie Operating.
And Bobby?
Hey, thank you. Good morning, JJ. Thanks for having us here. My name is Bobby Hulett. I'm the director for Chevron, Colorado. Chevron's been operating in Colorado for over 90 years. Our first well was on the Rangeley Ranch over in Piceance. Today, we're the largest oil and gas producer in the state. We've got over 800 employees and thousands of contractors or business partners, as we like to call them, because they truly are partners in our business. And we invest in the local communities where we operate, and we're committed to delivering reliable, affordable, and ever cleaner energy to meet Colorado's increasing energy demands. Thanks.
Jacob?
Yeah, Jacob Stockton, Director of Operations for Flywheel Energy, TEP Rocky Mountain Division. Again, thank you, JJ, for having us. It's an honor to be here. We're a little bit newer. Unlike Bobby, we haven't been in the state 90 years, so Flywheel closed on TEP Rocky Mountain April 7th of last year, but we're very excited to be in the state and plan to operate this asset for multiple decades.
So you each do similar but different things at different times. Jacob, start with you. What's working great, and where are some areas where you're seeing operational challenges? How's the business?
The business is good. I think for us, some of the operational challenges facing oil and gas in Colorado is just the regulatory uncertainty. I want to be precise because I think that framing is important. It's not that Colorado has regulations. Every state has regulations. We operate in 4 states. But it's how the pace and volume of those regulations have been kind of moving through in the last 4 years. Since SB 181 was signed, in 2019, we've seen a lot of rulemaking, and to the ECMC's credit, they've done a great job with the workload that they've had in those rulemaking progresses. But we've also seen through the production data that it has had an impact in the state, and I think that we want to make sure that we kind of stay within the current regulatory framework. If we continue to layer on regulations, I think we're going to see greater impacts to the capital that's deployed in the state and jobs.
Bobby, Chevron, similar experience? And
Yeah, JJ, what I'd like to say is we're very busy here. You know, I'm investing at a high clip, primarily in the DJ, but also in the Piceance. You know, maybe a point I'd like to highlight today and amplify is the opportunity that we have. If you look at the reservoirs that are predominantly responsible for production here in this state, they're shale and tight reservoirs. If you look at the U.S. oil production that had peaked back in 1970, and it declined for 40 years to 2010. And then the industry figured out how to pair horizontal drilling and fracking in these shale and tight reservoirs. And that peak in 1970 is no longer the peak. It's really taken off, and that's led to tremendous upside in production volumes here in Colorado and other states. Even with that, so if that started in 2010 at scale, this is 2026, we're a teenager. We're 16 years into this, and we haven't got life figured out yet. We're still figuring it out. We're early in this game. And if you look at all the forecasts that we have for the DJ, for the peons, for shale and tight reservoirs, that's all based on current methodologies and technologies that we know today. Those current methodologies and technologies get less than 10% of the oil in place that's down there, down in the reservoir. There's a lot of upside. Other reservoir types started out that way. Heavy oil, sandstone, offshore, deep water started out that way. And industry figured out a way to crack the code and increase that 10% to 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 and even higher. So we've got a lot of upside here in Colorado, and that's something that I'd like to speak about later on in this session as well.
Yeah, and Greg, how's business? Challenges, opportunities?
JJ, business is good. As a new operator, kind of starting back up, not necessarily in personnel experience, but in the operation prowess of Prairie. We're a small microcap public company. 3 words that don't go well together on a regular basis. So the things that matter to us are time and money. And so as we look at Colorado, we love the returns. As Bobby pointed out, the future here is bright. We think there's a lot of opportunity. But for us to be able to grow, to expand, to be economic, time comes into play the most for us. Permitting timelines, the timelines of which we can operate because of the regulations that continue to get stricter and stricter with time, ultimately impact how efficiently we can purchase land, return shareholder dollars, acquire new prospects, develop that prospect, permit that prospect, and then once again, the cycle time of returning that back. So the things that we've run up against here in the state recently as a new operator are just the aspects of continual reoccurrence of time to get those permits and the amount of time that it takes for us to go out, deploy shareholder capital to purchase leases, and then go through the process and procedures that are well amplified. As Jacob laid out, the CMC has done a good job of getting through rulemaking, making them laws, making them a guideline, but those guidelines take a long time to get through. So as a new operator in spirit, that's the thing that we run up against the most problems with here in the state. And I think, we're very opportunistic, as Bobby pointed out, about the opportunity set here moving forward. We plan to be here for a long time, and helping build efficiencies around that with our regulating bodies is where we'd like to spend time.
A lot of consistency between this industry and the broader industry in Colorado in terms of the number and complexity of. We're talking about rules, but our legislature is really getting down to the nuts and bolts of the activity this session. We have 100 legislators. They're allowed to introduce 5 bills each. We're up to almost 700 this year. You can do the math. And that's just the statutory effects, not the follow-on rulemaking. And when you think about speed to market, how important is that to the business, and how important is that speed to market, those permitting timelines to those investment decisions you might be making, the local jobs that impacts, and then the revenue to those local communities. And then one of the things that we've done is we take people around the country, business leaders, and see, for example, in the city and county of Denver last year, it could take up to 2 years to get a building permit. In Charlotte, North Carolina, that was 3.5 months. So are there other examples around the country where you see that speed to market being done differently? How does Colorado compare to other markets in which you do business or you see doing business? And then how does that impact decision making?
So I'll kick back in there, and when we are DJ focused, so it's a little bit more unique. And obviously we share a lot of commentation back and forth with other peers in the industry. And I think as we get towards Jacob, who has a lot of experience across multiple basins, he'll be able to talk to the comparison a little bit more. But again, I'll just touch on the point that you brought up, which is 18 to 24 months for a permit is generally what we're seeing on the Front Range for the DJ, and that's from inception, initial filings, town meetings, getting that permit in hand, and being able to move and occupy the drill site. I think a lot of our peers, I would say, are quicker, but I'll let my peers who have direct access to that talk about it.
Yeah, I can jump in, JJ. Thank you. Similar to Chevron, we operate outside of Colorado. In Oklahoma, we're seeing permits 2 to 3 weeks be approved. Same with Arkansas. In Texas, it can be even shorter. It is really important when you think about capital deployment, right? If I spend a dollar here, I may not be realizing that capital or the returns for 2 years, right? Whereas in Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, you can realize those returns a lot faster. It absolutely affects the economics of those decisions. That said, I think we have seen some positive direction in permit cycle times, and I think I'd just praise the folks that are behind that and continue or encourage them to continue those efforts.
Well, I think there may be people in our crowd that are those other states less concerned about environment, community impact. Why is there that difference?
No, it's not lax regulatory environments. I know everyone has, kind of the original 1930s picture of Oklahoma and Texas in their head and during the oil booms. But particularly when it comes to field enforcement, where regulatory really matters and really impacts the environment, it is not a lax environment.
Bobby, Chevron have an opinion? Put you on the spot?
No, I guess I'll just say, obviously I moved here a year ago, and Colorado is a beautiful state. Protecting the environment, protecting the natural resources is a priority, and it makes sense that's in place here. I checked in last night at the dinner. It was great to be able to visit with so many of you. Got to visit with Commissioner Maxey with Weld County and Director Murphy for ECMC, and we really have seen the cycle times go down at Chevron. I was checking in with our permitting manager, and it's about 8 months on average for us to prepare the permits, and then cycle time once we submit about another 8 months, so 16 months total. Yeah, of course, the industry likes shorter cycle times. We're always learning, and that cycle time of being able to implement something that works or cut something out that doesn't work, that's important, but we really do appreciate, Weld County, ECMC, and the other agencies that have made reducing cycle time a priority, and it has reduced, and that is making a difference, so we want to appreciate that.
In broader business, we sometimes say that stability and predictability can even beat low price. Do you feel like we're getting to a point where we're stable and predictable enough that you can look out into the future and justify what could be multi-decade investments for shareholders and investors and for your business?
We definitely think there's a lot more alignment than there has been since 2018, and that's been highly beneficial for our ability to start up, to be able to sell the story to shareholders, to be able to tell a story of a regulated environment that is known, which was an issue for smaller companies previously. Like the GWPs of the world in 2018 through 2020. So we appreciate the support of the commissioners and of the counties and of the ECMC for getting those rulemakings finalized, because that has solidified our ability to raise funds. The question mark still remains is what's in the future. And because of the past, obviously, past sets a precedent. And so there's always questions. And that's something that we see as a smaller company of how do you survive another rulemaking session? How do you survive additional legislation that gets put in place above and beyond one of the cleanest molecule producing states in the United States and one of the leaders in it? And so that's one of the questions we still do get from shareholders as we're looking to raise additional funds and grow the company.
And Bobby, it sounds like you're seeing more predictability and stability here too, and improvement in the company's experience.
Yeah, stability is very important for investor confidence, both regulatory stability, fiscal stability. If we talk about our permitting cycle time as 16 to 20 months, and then, you have to schedule the rig and the frac crew, and by the time you execute it and put the well on production, that's a 2 to 3 year period right there. And then in order to recover the investment and try to get a return on that investment, that's a 20 to 30 year period that the wells are on production. We're in a long cycle business, a long cycle industry. It's tough to win the game when the rules are changing during the course of the game. So stability is very important for investor confidence.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think for Flywheel, we intend to be here for multiple decades, very similar to Chevron. And that's not a short-term investment thesis. And that stability long-term allows us to deploy capital with confidence and make sure that we can run our business with confidence. So the more that we can get, we can operate within the current regulatory framework. Could we see improvements? Absolutely. Would we love to see reduced permit cycle times? Yes. Do we think that it would bring more capital to the state? Yes. But I would say on that note, like, we are in this for the long haul. We care about these communities. We care about the environment and these resources, and we're making decisions today that will impact the future positively for Colorado.
Yeah, one thing that I guess we would observe from the, again, broader business community is that as frustrating sometimes as rulemaking can be, it tends to beat the blunt instrument that comes with a ballot initiative. From whichever point of view, because there's no nuance, there's no detail, there's no precision in when we start the ballot wars. Is that something you see in Colorado as a risk too that comes to mind when you think of doing business in our state? Is the ease at which folks can access our ballot?
You know, JJ, I think we've all been here multiple years, and we've seen 2018 forward. I was one of the individuals that provided testimony to the state on Bill 118, and so as we look at how that has progressed on a go-forward basis, both sides have brought issues to the table. Most recently, there's been some members that are supportive of oil and gas that maybe disrupted things and caused issues that have caused both sides to cause issue. So to your point, the accessibility and ease of that. Intentional, unintentional, unintended consequences, again, that sustainability of sustenance and being able for the status quo for us to operate, bring investment to the state, continue to grow and expand, use new technologies. Some of the universities that are here today in the programs that they're offering continue to get more technical, more detailed. They've used AI to eliminate time. Again, I come back to that time is money. And ultimately, they've increased the aptitude of what those technologies and recoverabilities hopefully are going to increase for us in the future. And so the more that we can keep a status basis, continue to produce that cleanest molecule, continue to meet the regulatory requirements, and being partners together, I think both the state and operators will succeed.
When you think about technology changes, switch a little bit to production and talk about electrification and how that's impacting exploration production. And are we on the right path? Is it as easy as it sounds to just electrify? Talk a little bit about that. Grid capacity, rural communities. How's that impacting exploration production?
I'll be real quick and then pass it off to those that have larger operations. So we are definitely operating in what we would call a tier 2 type environment of quality rock, as Prairie operating is. And our aspirations are to create tier 1 returns through cost. So while we still strive and do our best to achieve all the best technologies out there and electrify as much as possible, some of the areas we're developing in don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the capacity. It's robbing capacity from general households to be able to produce, but yet the production brings additional revenue, taxes, et cetera, to the local municipalities, the county, et cetera. And so we've found other ways to produce electricity, as has many other industries, compressed natural gas, solar, subsidizing from other states such as Wyoming. And we do our best with that. But to some extent, some of the rules block our ability to operate in these rural areas that have great recoverability, that have great opportunity. And so more clarification and work with the local municipalities and regulatory agencies is an area that we would like to continue to work on.
Bobby?
Yeah, I'll say energy we feel needs to be reliable, affordable, and ever cleaner. Electrification is a major component on that ever cleaner, being able to connect up to the grid, whether you're talking about electrifying drilling rigs, which all of our fleet is, or even frac operations, which is now possible, or even production operations, really gets a lot of the emissions out of the system. It helps us, meet permit requirements, and it's the way to go. that works as long as the grid's available. And in a lot of our remote locations, it's not. So on our drilling rigs, we use compressed natural gas instead of diesel. That will reduce emissions as well. But electrification and grid availability is certainly a key for us to continue to lower the emissions.
Jacob, electrification?
Yeah, I think it's a laudable goal, right? Especially when you consider over a long period of time. I think where we run into some issues, especially on the west slope, is sometimes you have unintended consequences. When you go to generate that electricity at a local level and it's not grid electricity, you can actually kind of defeat the goal that you're ultimately driving towards, which is cleaner energy. And so we believe in electrification. We have an electric frac fleet that we run, and it's fantastic. We've been very excited about the emissions goals that we've been able to meet with that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the policy has to align with what is actually feasibly feasible, period. And we have to have kind of all stakeholders involved and make sure that we're moving in a common direction.
So it may end up being that one community has different rules than another based on the infrastructure that's available rather than a statewide plan.
Yeah, I think that would be great. I think we need to take a look at what infrastructure is in place and what is feasible to build over time and make sure that the policy aligns with that.
Bobby, you talked a little bit at the beginning about how we're still discovering how much opportunity there is in Colorado, and while production is good, that there's still a lot there that's available. Talk about that innovation and looking forward. Are we giving industry the space to be creative and innovate and bring new technology to try to discover those additional resources? And what should we be doing better, whether it's in higher education or skills training, or what do we need to do to be able to really realize those opportunities for Colorado's future?
Yeah, no, thanks, JJ. I think that's a key point that I really would like to promote is if you just look at the upside here in Colorado is tremendous. If you think the recovery right now is projected to be, let's say, 8% from these shale and tight reservoirs, both the Piceance and the DJ. And if industry can figure out a way to double that. So basically everything that you think will ever be produced out of the Piceance and the DJ could be doubled. And that's employment, that's tax revenue, that's economic impact, that's benefit to local communities, all of that. I mean, that's a tremendous upside to chase. Our industry is extremely innovative. We can figure it out. We've proven that many times in the past decades, over 100 years of advancing what we can do that previously was viewed as not very possible to do. But you're right, we do need access. We don't have the recipe figured out yet. This is going to be a deal where we need to go try something. It's not going to work. We'll learn from it. We'll pivot. We'll try something else. And that cycle has got to be able to repeat. Now, certainly, we have to meet the needs of the local communities. That's important. Table stakes keep people safe, protect the environment. But we do need a fair way to be able to try, fail, learn, and improve to reap that upside benefit that's out there.
Jacob, do you see it from Flywheel as well, the same point of view?
Absolutely. I mean, innovation is a core part of our culture at Flywheel. Learning from our mistakes and clearly defining and measuring success when it comes to innovation. We believe in what we call firing bullets instead of cannonballs, so very much incremental approach. And we try to keep the failures to be low consequence. I think that's something important, Bobby, to mention is we're not talking about failures that you would see in the news. We're talking about really trying to innovate, come up with new technologies that actually yield tangible benefits to the communities here and elsewhere.
Greg, it sounds like the Prairie's model is to do more innovation and to be able to get those tier one returns from different assets. Technology changes that, makes that easier. How do you see innovation in the industry?
I think Bobby said it probably the best in terms of just opening new horizons. And I reiterate, the electric fleets and the electric drill rigs, they've added time, taken time off. They've actually benefited us as that technology's gotten better. It's immediate power source. You're not ramping up. You're not dealing with those type of issues. So we appreciate those things. But at the same point in time, flexibility with innovation kind of go hand in hand. You have to be able to experiment a little bit, to be able to make the next steps, to even make those steps even better.
Is that a partnership that happens, or how do you all envision that taking place? Or is it a pilot program that we start at the state that says, okay, in this location you can try these new things? Is it research with our institutions of higher education, Mesa, CU, Mines, CSU? I don't want to leave them out; I'll get in trouble. But like, where's that innovation going to occur, and how could you apply it in the field? Like, what would stop you, or what is a barrier that might need to be removed, or what is a pathway that might need to be created to provide an incentive for some of this innovation?
I mean, I don't want to sound like beating a dead horse here, but permit cycle times would be huge. Being able to get permit cycle times down for new and innovative things, exploring new reservoirs, whatever it is. Again, when you're already talking about a risky proposition, something that you're not sure is going to work, delaying that for 2 years, 3 years adds a significant more amount of risk on top of that from an economic standpoint.
How would let me push back a little? Like, if
Sure.
I'm a commissioner or even a regulator at the state, I'm like, well, do I want that innovation or that risk taken in my neighborhood or my community? How should they think about creating those pathways or incentives to give these things a try?
Yeah, I think there are models in other states. I think for Colorado, again, just applaud the regulators at some of the progress that we've made so far. I think we're on the right track. But as we continue down these paths, again, we don't get any good press from failures, right? So we want to keep our failures to be low consequence failures. Nothing. We're talking about money failures here, right? Not environmental failures. So I think that's important to keep in mind.
I guess I hadn't thought of the money failure rather than like sort of a catastrophic environmental failure. Bobby, same. Chevron does this all over the world. Like, are you seeing other areas where innovation may be a little easier, or the pathway is a little bit clearer than it is here? Or are there things that we can learn from other places?
Yeah, JJ, you had asked about who's involved, where do these come from, and I think it's really all of the above. I mean, our education institutions, the research they do contributes to that. A lot of our service companies bring those ideas forward. Certainly, local government, state government agencies have to be at the table too. We only operate with the permission of the public, so you have to acknowledge the needs of the local community as well as regulation. Chevron's fortunate that we have these shale-and-tight assets not only here in Colorado, but also in the Permian, Texas, New Mexico, up in the Bakken in North Dakota, and even in Argentina. So in some cases, we can try things in one place that may be easier or more remote or lower downside, lower consequence of failure, and then apply it once we learn it and get it. We call it from pilot to playbook. But some things are unique to Colorado as well that we need to try here.
I rarely encounter people that in business who say they always have access to the workforce that they need at the time that they need it. And you all do business in different parts of the state. How has your experience been attracting workers to Colorado, getting the skilled talent that you need to run your businesses here? And is it different between you? Do you have different experiences depending on what part of our state? One of our challenges as a state that we've been working closely with the governor on is to improve the access and affordability to housing. And that's not just a Front Range issue, that's a statewide issue. Are you able to find the talent you need, Greg, on the Front Range? Are you able to find who you want and who you need and get them to move here if necessary? Can they afford a place to live?
JJ, that's a great topic in terms of there's been a lot of consolidation. And so with the consolidation, there's been opportunity to hire people. We've taken advantage of that. I think the general consensus is we do have to pay more to keep them here as opposed to take jobs in other states. And so that does diminish returns. Ultimately, Colorado's a great place to live. Safety is a foremost for us. So we love people who are hired that live in our communities. We love to support our communities. And to do that, we have to keep our guys safe. And so we do our best to keep people employed here. I think we've done a good job with it, but it has cost more year over year, compounding. And there is a decent workforce, but getting people to come in, it's a twofold question. Hiring people who are here is one thing. Getting people to move to the state has been a more difficult thing if you're looking for a specific technical skill or something of that nature because of their cost of living elsewhere.
Yeah, Totally agree, Greg. I think we have an awesome local team here, and they've been operating this asset for a long time. But attracting new talent to the state is a challenge. I would also say that we do have some folks that are looking at other states and seeing the opportunity there and asking what they can do to go and realize that opportunity. I don't think we have any concerns currently, but I think long term, given the regulatory uncertainty, whether it's rising taxes in the state or whatever it is, cost of living, I think there is a potential concern.
Yeah, I'll just echo that as well. I think at Chevron here in Colorado, we have a fantastic team. It's one of the best teams I've ever seen. We're fairly stable workforce here, not a lot of attrition. Sometimes just personally, I'll step back and think, what could be better than working in this industry in this state? It's a beautiful state. It's a great place to live. And it's a wonderful industry to work in. I do think it's a good point. There's certainly watch points, cost of living, education, access to health care, both the western slope on the Front Range. Those are watch points. The attractiveness of the industry, when I got out of school 33, 34 years ago, it was very attractive to join the oil and gas industry. That may have changed for our recent graduates from trade schools or engineering programs or other technical degrees. And I think it's important that we, have confidence that the talented young folks can enter this industry and can count on having a full career to be able to work in this industry here.
Yeah, just your fun fact, we're the most expensive state in housing that doesn't have a coast. So it's challenging as a market to be able to, and again, that tends to be a statewide issue. We have $1 billion worth of tax policy that's going to be decided in the next couple of weeks at the state legislature, and we have a potential ballot initiative that would more than double the income tax on Colorado's small businesses and employers alike. So lots to pay attention to in terms of our overall competitiveness. We at the Chamber currently have us about 46th in cost of living out of the 50 states and 41st in cost of doing business. So it is a competitive issue for all of us in terms of attracting workforce and making sure people have an affordable place to live within a reasonable commute to their job site or to work. Are you seeing good partnerships? Is there anything you'd call out in relationships with higher ed or skill building institutions that are particularly of note to you, where you're seeing great talent come up? And how many of your roles do you see require that bachelor's or advanced degree versus just good skills?
Ultimately, we have a broad set of range of skill sets that we employ, everything from PhDs, master's degrees, all the way down to high school diplomas and some that may not. And so, we try to hire the best person for the job. And that's something, as we're kind of mindful about hiring and or relocating in that situation, is bringing in the right skill set, the necessary skill set, and making sure that, we are covered in areas of safety, covered in areas of opportunity. And so, the programs in Colorado, just to touch on that, and I started off my introduction with, I graduated in Colorado. I've been in Colorado. I've lived through some of the escalations in prices. I'm not looking forward to paying for my college tuition for my two children, but ultimately they get to live here and get to see and experience things that my wife and I have. But CSU, Mines, the Western States colleges, et cetera, have all just continually enhanced their programs. We see great candidates coming out of them, both that have gone through them traditionally, as well as candidates that have gone to them secondarily to come back into the space. And so that's something, as I think we've all resounded on, is we want to be able to continue to provide that opportunity set, not for the next decade, but for the next 20, 30 years.
Jacob, similarly?
Yeah, I think on the Western Slopes, it's a great story. We have an internal trainee program that we promote for production techs that kind of start people in their career in natural gas. On the professional side, we have one of the best land and energy departments at CMU, local to us, Brian Hotard. Brian Hotard works for us in our land department and is also a professor, adjunct professor at CMU, and Steve Soychek has been really great to work with as well. So we do have several strategic partnerships with local universities and internal programs to kind of help develop that workforce.
Bobby, do people, because again, you got operations all over the world. Is Colorado a destination of choice? Do people, hey, how do I get on the Colorado team?
How could it not be? I mean, it's probably one of the most beautiful places that I've ever worked at, and I've worked at several, not every place worldwide for Chevron, but it's a great place to live, great place to work. And just like my colleagues here mentioned, it's important to have good relationships with, the feeder pools, that'd be technical schools, Ames Community College over on the Front Range School of Mines, as well as other community colleges and technical schools. And JJ, you asked about the different jobs that we have, and with Chevron, about half of our workforce is in the office and requires some type of technical degree, but half of our workforce is out in the field as well. So it's a broad spectrum, and it's a lot of disciplines and a lot of expertise that we need to operate in this industry.
If you're thinking, and we'll make sure we have time for audience questions too, but if you're thinking about first priority changes, like if you could sit with this group right now and say, hey, here, before we leave today, here are the couple things that we really need to accomplish to better align industry with community and partners and governments, what are those one or two things that you really see as high priorities that would be the biggest change in the ability to do your business here? Greg, do you want to start?
Man, put us on the spot here, JJ. I think we have long-standing relationships with people that we've hired, back to the hiring, and making sure that we have people who have been in and around not just oil and gas, but in and around the local municipalities, whether that be Weld County. We got Mr. Kavanaugh sitting over here, and I have a great relationship with him as we've been an entrant, and they've worked with us to help us get up and running. Or the relationships that we've built with members of my team and Ms. Murphy, at the UCMC. And so I think, continuing to have, I'll say it again, and I sound like a broken record, the time to work with them, to be opportunistic, to grow, to expand, and to find new ways to do things, I think is the way of the future. And, if I had unlimited time, it would be with those members that have the voice at their respective areas.
Bobby, what are the one or two priority things? You have a lot of important leaders in the room here, from regulators to commissioners to active community citizens. Top two things that should be accomplished?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate, JJ. I think, acknowledging the upside is tremendous for industry, for the state, for local communities, and the need to collaborate together, industry meeting with local and state governments, the communities. The more regulations, the tighter the grip on industry, the smaller the fairway to try to access. And we need fairway. We need the ability to go try things and pivot. So it's the need to collaborate to get that upside, because it's good for the state, it's good for the local communities, it's good for the industry, and it's there.
Jacob, one or two things that you see as high priorities to accomplish?
Well, we're all part of oil and gas companies, and so we do have pretty similar things. So I think the thing that I would add is probably what I started with. It's not necessarily a change. I think it's maintaining the status quo and not layering on additional regulations. I think if we can stick with the current framework, it's very clear that we've made some really great advancement of that framework, and not add additional regulatory uncertainty. That'll be a huge win for industry. It'll be a huge win for the state.
On that collaboration, how is it in an industry that has such technical and scientific complexity that doesn't necessarily lend itself to a town hall discussion with folks who may not have that level of scientific or complexity on how the industry works, or how community leaders have to respond? Are there things that we can do to make the industry more accessible to communities, better understood, better education? And is that the work of Dan Haley and CRED? How do we help people be? I always say there's a big difference between having an opinion and being informed. How can we better inform the residents of Colorado about the industry?
I'll jump in real quick. I think, yeah, absolutely. KOGA, CRED, I think those have done well, but educating the retail populace, I think, is necessary. Defining where our real energy sources come from, how it's utilized, being more transparent in terms of the safety procedures that are in place, that we do follow, because we abide, let alone abide, but believe in as management at Prairie in terms of, those policies and being a better tomorrow. And so, as you think about education, it comes in multiple forms. It comes on one-on-one, it comes on general kind of disbursement, and then it comes in just the nature of providing the extra time to sit down and have those conversations, whether that be with communities or programs in colleges, et cetera, as we're educating those from the ground up.
Bobby?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think it's a shared responsibility. I think each company has the responsibility to communicate transparently and openly. I think COGA, CRED, API are all very valuable organizations that also share in that as well.
Jacob, any innovative ideas on making sure communities understand the complexity and scientifics of the business?
I don't know that I have any new and innovative ideas, but I will say that I think, traditionally oil and gas has not done a great job of that. And it's really to our detriment. And I think there are some tools in the toolbox that we need to start employing, and make sure that we're providing factual information to the public. I think our keynote speaker yesterday did a great job. Energy typically only gets negative attention. When you walk over and hit that light switch, you don't think, oh, thank you, every single time. And it's really when you don't get your lights on that you pay attention to it. So I think 2 points, I think we need public engagement and we need to engage the public.
Yeah, I wasn't in the energy industry. I grew up in Colorado agriculture, and we used to hear all the time, well, we don't understand why we need the farmer. We have the city market next door where we can get our groceries. I want to stop here for a minute and open it to the audience. There are a lot of important and hardworking folks out here who are in the business to give you all an opportunity to talk to the panelists and ask your question directly. We got a lot of diversity in the panel. So is there anything that I left out as your moderator that you'd like to hear them answer? Or a topic that I didn't bring up that's important for you all to be able to hear? We have a few minutes for those conversations to take place if you go to one of the microphones.
And Greg has graciously offered to answer all the questions.
All the difficult questions?
Thanks, Jacob.
And please, before you start your question, if you just tell us who you are and where you're from so that the panelists have some context.
Yeah, is this one on? Okay, hi. Julie Mullica, Adams County Commissioner. Thanks so much for this panel. I think it was really helpful. JJ, I think you hit it on the head when you talked about how can we engage communities better. And I think especially with the speaker yesterday, that was a light bulb moment for me of not just talking about oil and gas in a silo, but talking about energy as a whole, and incorporating all of the different avenues that were discussed during this conference. And so I'm really eager to have, I guess, really just map out what does that look like specifically for my community and other folks in the metro area. Because, yes, when you switch that light on, it's great that it comes on, and I think people take that for granted. I also want to just highlight on behalf of the commissioners in the room, I think I won't find a commissioner who won't agree with you. There's a lot of bills in these sessions, and we would love to see that decreased as well. I feel like every session I'm just trying to make it through and hoping something crazy doesn't happen at the end. But thank you so much for your time, and really looking forward to having a more robust conversation, including our community, in what does energy look like for all of us. So thank you all.
Thanks, Commissioner. All right, now is Adams County your favorite? Oh, you don't want to answer? Okay, it's okay. Other questions from the panelists? I want to make sure we have enough time. Yes, sir.
Tyson Johnston with Frontier Regulatory Advisors. What, as we've gone through the legislative session this year, it's looked a little different because of some negotiations that have taken place in the past. What do you guys see coming in the upcoming year as, the deal changes and a new governor comes into office, and the risks that we see revolving around a potential supermajority in the Senate?
Do you want to talk about political risks?
I guess I was elected to answer all questions. I've also all of a sudden come down with a loss of voice. The politics obviously create change, and change creates sustainability in terms of how we think about investors, and it kind of uproots the ship a little bit. Is the certain things that I think that are prevalent on our table right now. One of them is recycled water. How that's going to end up indefinitely. Ultimately, we're big advocates of it. Water is a source that we're very dear to, and this year is going to be sparse. And so how we use it and using it the most efficiently, not necessarily using it absolutely. And the differential between that is, can we use it across a more amount in one area as opposed to an absolute amount that has to be used in one area you can't get it to. Similar to like the electrification, like where there isn't electricity, can you use more electricity in one spot and carry the credit over? And so the credit system in and around water and regulatory around water is something that's on the forefront for us. Other aspects, we'll just have to see where they come out. But I think, there's been great compromise between the commission, between the municipalities, between the counties, in terms of working through things in the past. We're hopeful that that's in the future. And so, we want to make sure that we sustain those relationships.
Bobby, Jacob, you want to talk about political risk or how you're preparing for a change in administrations?
Yeah, maybe I'll just say that as we talked about, these are long cycles, right? We talked about that, by the time you make the investment and you recover the investment and chase the return, it's decades. And so a lot changes during that time period. Society changes, product prices have its cyclical approach. A lot of times political leadership changes and even, positions or programs. And so, the important things is that we continue to collaborate. We continue to communicate transparently, that we talk about the benefits of the industry. You have to look at things on both sides of the coin. And the industry brings a lot of benefit for energy security, for economic growth, for jobs, for tax revenue, which is in the billions per year. And so no matter what happens in this cycle or farther on, we need to continue to collaborate with the leaders.
Jacob, anything to add? Do you agree?
Nothing to add.
Yeah. You didn't ask the Chamber of Commerce, but we're nervous about ballot issues. We're nervous about financials. And from the Chamber of Commerce point of view, single party control of every lever of government is risk creating. Doesn't matter which party it is. And a super majority legislative control of a single party is massively risk creating. So those are things that we're paying attention to. Yes, sir.
Yes, my question would be, going back in history, we always learn from history. And right here in western Colorado and in the Piceance, everything channeled to western Colorado with the oil shale boom and bust. Then in 2008, when Katrina hit, we became ground zero for oil and gas development. Moving forward, do company strategists have like a robust plan in place? We talked about yesterday the rollback from the Trump administration to roll back regulation. But if prices were to move in a position where you could profit, is there a way to work with state and federal to have a more robust, comprehensive development plan?
Greg went first last time, Jacob, so now it's your turn.
I think so. I think, again, going back to permitting cycle times, if pricing does get in place and, things are really favorable here, one of the problems would be we wouldn't be able to realize it for 2 to 3 years. I think that's the primary challenge. But again, to Bobby's point, he's made it several times. There's so much upside. There's so much opportunity in the state of Colorado. So I think it is a bright future. And I think that we've talked about the key levers that we have to pull to realize that bright future today.
Bobby, anything to add on the federal-state relationship?
Yeah, no, I'll just say, with Chevron, with global operations, we want to invest in the best projects, no matter where they are, the ones that have the best returns for our investors. And Colorado is in that mix. It has to compete with other activities. So, certainly working with the local and state leaders to make this as attractive as opportunity for investment would behoove that going forward.
Any other questions? We have just a couple of minutes left. Okay, then I guess I'll wrap us up and tell you that I'm the Chamber of Commerce guy. My job is to fly all over the world and tell people why Colorado's awesome. So I have worked on those elevator pitches, but I want to hear yours now. With the few minutes that we have left, Jacob, we'll start with you, and then Bobby and Greg, you get the most time to think about it. But what's the pitch that you'd send me around the world to say, why Colorado? Why should we invest here? Why should we work here? Why should we move here, raise families, live, retire? What's your sales talk for why Colorado?
Great question. I would say it's the things that make every state great from a economic standpoint. I mean, Colorado has unprecedented beauty. There's no question about that. But we also have amazing people here and a great workforce. We've talked about the natural resources that Colorado has to bring to bear. I think those are the primary pitches that I would put out.
Bobby, you came from Mississippi. What persuaded you, and how do you share that story? Now you're a Bronco fan even, right?
Now I'm a Bronco fan. That's right. Go Broncos. Yeah, I would start off, JJ, by saying the oil and gas industry is here globally to stay. It's going to be a huge part of the energy mix for decades to come. If I can just quickly go off on a tangent, I've spent 34 years with Chevron, and coming from a small town, Mississippi, I feel very blessed to have a career in this industry and to work for Chevron, not only in the U.S., but in Indonesia, Colombia, and Nigeria. What I learned when I went to these international locations is they're good people, just like us. They want the best for their families. They want their children to have a better life than they had. The quality of life's not the same in these locations to what we see here in the U.S. Maybe a proxy for that is a statistic. If you look at the number of motor vehicles per 1,000 residents, in the U.S. we have 780 motor vehicles per 1,000 residents. So a family of 5, that would be roughly four vehicles. In Colombia, the number is about 250 motor vehicles per 1,000 residents. In Indonesia, it's 100. And I've made many friends in Nigeria, where I worked for 5 years not too long ago. Keep up with them today, great people. They're less than 60, about 58 cars, motor vehicles per 1,000 residents. 80% of the world's never stepped on an airplane before. We need new sources of energy to meet the world's growing demand. Oil and gas is going to be a very important part of that mix for decades to come. So I would encourage people to acknowledge that and come into the industry. And Colorado's a beautiful place to live. It's an awesome place to be, and it's been endowed with a tremendous natural resource that's there for us to responsibly further develop and produce these resources.
It's good. You're hired, Greg. What's the
Man, that's one hard to follow. I've been here for 23 years now, and ultimately, I think Colorado is a very sustainable state. I grew up on a farm in Pennsylvania. We have agriculture in Colorado. We have water supply. We have recreation. We have industry. We have all the things that make the state of Colorado a wonderful place to live, a sustainable place to live, and it's something we all want to sustain. And I think that's a unique and common goal. And ultimately, albeit our housing prices are slightly escalated compared to the rest of the United States, I think ultimately you pay a little bit for what you get. And getting all of those things and having access to all of those things is worthwhile. Keeping it that way, both from the beauty of the state aspect, but as well as being able to have the jobs and being able to operate and continue that aspect to sustain that, I think is the aspect that there's a lot of productivity that has happened within the state and continues. And I think that's the outlook that I would like to tell people as they come here.
Awesome. Can we thank our panelists for their time and expertise? Jacob, Bobby, and Greg. And join your local Chamber of Commerce. There you go. Have a great rest of the conference. I think we're on to networking next, but you tell us the...
We sure are. Thank you all very much. Very much appreciate it.